If you're nomadic, there's no mountain and there's no tree.
Right.
So they resorted to an astrology that dealt more with the moon, because no matter where you are on the earth, the lunar phases are obviously exactly what they are. You don't have a full moon in New York and a quarter moon in California and a balsamic moon in the Soviet Union. It's consistent. So they developed, as I said, being nomads, those types of cultures related to a lunar astrology. But in that we're more settled people now, we tend to, and that we have the computerized, what we call the ephemeris, which is a charting, an astronomical charting of planetary positions, and we know where the sun will be no matter where we are. We've all more or less resorted to the solar approach to understanding things, as well as the position of other planets.
Wow, that was a lot. Okay, let's make it a little more simple for the audience. I'm a Virgo.
Okay.
The 9. So is there any particular traits that doing a chart that would elaborate on?
What that means?
Yes, because I was told I'm an earth sign.
Yes. All right, the signs in that trisection I spoke about, that division of 3 within the quadrature, which was seasonal, solstice and equinox, they were divided into elemental representations, meaning 3 of the signs were related to the element of earth, then fire, air, and water. Now, the psychological component of that, expression of that, is that earth people will manifest a certain practicality in their life. They are grounded, and they are, as we would say, earthy. Air people tend to be more into the mental realm. Thoughts flow just like the air flows. Thoughts are an invisible abstraction, very much like the air. You can't see it, but if it's a windy day, you can definitely feel it. Just like we can feel the impact of strong thoughts and strong decisions. Fire are people who are motivated by intuition, high enthusiasm, somewhat adventurous spirit. Water are the emotion-based people. Now, water people tend to feel and need to feel relevant to all situations that they're going to be involved in, or they can very easily become uncomfortable. It's very interesting, too, how this elemental distribution relates very dynamically to the education process. Water children tend to learn by osmosis. You put them in an environment that's positive, that's what they absorb. You put them in an environment that's negative, that's what they absorb. So
the water
element, yes.
Okay.
So when you're dealing with children, understanding, even if not the sign and the entire chart, understanding the elemental predisposition is very important. Whereas you take a fire child. Now, we know if we throw something in the water, it either floats it or it sinks it, but that's some form of acceptance. You throw the wrong thing in fire, it'll spit it right back at you.
That's right.
It'll come out like popcorn in a pan with no cover. Okay, so fire more easily rejects the influences that are external. And the reason is fire has a very strong sense of identity. Fire is related to the heart, the heartfelt self. Therefore, a fire person can be in a negative situation and say, you know what, I don't relate to that. I'm unimpressed. And can be uninfluenced. That's why you'll find, you know, families with a lot of kids or, you know, several children, and they've all been in the same family dynamic, you know, dependence, codependence, whatever is involved, and you'll see some kids surviving it almost as if it never happened. Other kids being crushed by it, and another child in the family who's totally oblivious to the fact it's even happening. That would be the air child. Their mind is so preoccupied with their own thought stream, they just don't have the time to be bothered. And usually they will be the youngest or the first to leave home and go out and follow their own convictions and their own thoughts. So the elemental distribution does play out in terms of a psychological dynamic with people. Uh, in addition to that, when we actually get to the doing of a chart, there is a structure in the chart that addresses the what I call the quadrature, only it's not based on the solstice and the equinox. It's based on what we call angles. Angles meaning that the person is the focal point, the center point of their chart.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is there are points taken from above their head and out to their eastern horizon. This cross forms the axis that they're born into. That also comes into play very strongly. In other words, let's say a person is a earth sign, but they're born on an air axis. This is what produces the diversity within a human personality. Everybody is not 100% their sign.
Okay.
We deal with the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The ancients stopped at Saturn, but we now know that the other planets are actually there, so we've started to include them in our work. They, based on their position in this angle structure in the chart, they produce a character overlay. And that's why, let's say, 50 million people are earth signs, but professionally they're not all doing the same thing.
Right.
Because this air sign professionally wants to deal with air. So they're a teacher.
Okay.
They're a lecturer. This particular earth sign, being very practical maybe in terms of how they manage their life, but they have a fire sign axis for career. So they want to be enthusiastic. They want to be energetic. They're climbing mountains, dancing on stages. Okay, so this diversity within the chart is what we actually calculate, and all the many facets of an individual. Limiting it to the sun sign, which is all the commercial astrology is really about, limits the individual. And it is not the objective of astrology to limit an individual, but rather to educate them and expose them to the many facets of who they are.
So that makes sense when you, so what are you really saying? We can be one sign and have the characteristic of the other signs too?
Well, the overall characteristic of the individual at their core, which is associated also with their life purpose, is their sun sign. But there are many ways to express that. And the different levels of expression in relation to the different parts of their life are all ruled by all the other signs. In other words, the departments of life are indicated in the chart structure by what we call 12 houses.
Okay.
So if there are 12 houses and you're a Virgo, Virgo can only be on one of those houses. Even though the sun is there, meaning that is the core nature of you as an individual, it will have its outlet in your life predominantly based on the affairs of the house in the chart that Virgo sun is in. Other aspects of your life will be under the influence of different signs altogether. However, you will handle those departments of life in the way of the other sign, but how a Virgo would do it. You follow what I'm saying? In other words, let's say you have a fire sign on your third house of communication style. All right, so that would make you very effervescent, very energetic. But the word content that you used and the message you gave would be practical because you're earth.
Right.
But your delivery could be fiery because you have fire on the house that rules the presentation of expression. That's how the different things come into play.
Wow, that's very interesting. Okay, so as an earth sign, is it possible for someone to be an earth sign and develop a stronger characteristic on the other sign, or you just stay?
Well, no, the core self and the life path, they are with you for this life.
Okay.
You need to be essentially, of essence, essentially, this individual for this incarnation
Okay.
in order to fulfill what it is you came to do. Now, the other characteristics that will be indicated by these other signs are an indication of your developed style over time, genetically, incarnationally, whatever belief system a person may hold.